that just a little while ago. The reason I am who I am, I think it goes back to my family. My family has been here in Rutherford County, goes back to 1802 is when that covered wagon showed up in the western part of this county. And that's where they, as I tell a lot of folks, that's where they unhooked the team. And they were coming here primarily due to a land grant that had been given to the family due to the Revolutionary War. They came to this part, and this is where they wanted to be. A lot of members of my family seemed to show up about that same time. And we've been a part of that area of Rutherford County. In fact, I've often told people we didn't have a family tree, we had a family bush. Oh. Because it seems like a lot of the people that are located out in Rockville, Eagleville, I live in what we call the small community of Versailles. It's spelled exactly like it is over in France, Versailles, but we call it Versailles. That's our pronunciation of it. It was settled by a group of French trappers out of Canada that come in there. They created a trading post. It was a rock trading post to trade with the Native Americans at that time, back in the 1700s. And we are located in an area. There's still a store that's located where that trading post was. Now it's a restaurant called the Fried Tater. And but if you drive through Versailles today, you'll see a lot of what you would have seen back in the 1800s, the 1860s. A lot of the old homes that are still sitting there are those that were built around the 1840s from the families that had moved in there in that early time. So my ancestry comes from that. My ability to tell about the history. We were talking about a while ago that that was developed back in the day before we had communications of television, and the way that people now no longer communicate as we once did. I guess I come from a line of storytellers where we tell about family, we talk about how we got here, what we done. I was fortunate to have a grandmother that enjoyed doing that. I happened to be the youngest of the family when I come around. I had a brother and sister. One was 8 years older than me. The other was 6 years older than me, and they seemed to take care of me and raise me. So I ended up knowing both sets of grandparents. I even knew great-grandparents. So I could hear these stories at a very early age, and I had the ability to remember those stories. I can remember breaking green beans on the back porch with my grandmother, and she would tell these stories, and it was just so fascinating. It was better than any television you'd ever watched. She would tell about how the Union Army had come through on her parents, and how things around that old farm that is still there, the old house that I was born in my great-great-great-grandfather's bedroom.
My goodness. And
that house is still sitting there. In fact, I was there Saturday to check on it after the tornado had gone through that part of the county. And it's just amazing that I still have the ability to walk the fields that they walked and get that part of history. So it's ingrained. It's what I see and what I enjoy. It's what I like to write about. I still write. As I was telling you a while ago, I was sitting Friday reading a will that my great-great-great-grandfather wrote on his deathbed. It's all written in cursive. And today we have students coming out of schools that wouldn't be able to read that. It would be a foreign language to them. And that's sort of, it makes me sad to think that, hey, we're going to have something here that one day that they'll have to get an interpreter to read things like that to people, to explain it to them.
That's amazing.
But it's quite. I sat there Friday reading his will and how he explained what he wanted done, how he wanted to give his daughter a new saddle for a new filly colt that was there, that he wanted to make sure she got this for that filly colt, for her to have it. And then it had also, he wanted money to be saved for her 21st birthday to make sure she got a good English education. And all of this is in this will, and the way it's so personal that when you read it, you're sitting there, you're hearing exactly the words that your great-great-great-grandfather was writing, and it's still live today and hearing these things. And that's what history is all about to me. I can still hear the members of my family and how they thought and what they thought about. In fact, he was the treasurer of the old Mount Pleasant Baptist Church that's up the road from this old farm. And in that, as a treasurer, and things he kept there, in the sidebar of that old treasurer records I have seen that was passed down to me from my uncle. My uncle left me a whole box of paperwork that he was in the same thing I was, I'm in today. He kept all the old history of the family. He kept pictures and things of the family that when he passed away, he passed it down to me. And I get the opportunity to read these things. But he had some of those old records. And in that sidebar, my Grandpa Vincent, he would write in the sidebar things what was happening that day.
Oh.
What was going on in the 1840s and 1850s. One time he had written in December, he said, it's snowing today, and it's really snowing hard, and it's cold. 42 days later, he writes back again. He said, we have been out of church. We have been unable to go anywhere because it had snowed off and on here for 42 days.
My goodness.
And they were unable to travel by horse and buggy that they had at that time because of the weather. And when I read that the day that I saw that, I thought, and here we are. Could you imagine in the 1840s and 50s having to deal with that kind of weather? Think about us today that we worry about if we're going to get salt trucks out.
Yes.
The grid is going to fail on us, and our central heat and air is not going to work. What they had to be concerned with is if the wood pile is going to hold up and if the smokehouse is going to have enough food for them. So, it's just a world of difference, and it gives me an opportunity to look back at how my family has survived. And, the things that I run in today is, okay, they're out of my favorite bread at the grocery store.
Yes.
It's a lot of difference between today and those days there. And it's what I think has made Rutherford County and the people of Rutherford County what they are.
And I can tell that you are so richly blessed by being able to look back at your forefathers and the history of Rutherford County. And that's why I really like to have you as a guest, because you share that with us. That's a story that I believe needs to be told, and that you can share that with us from a firsthand personal experience. And the audience gets to hear that. And if they miss any part of it, they can go on the WGNS website and they can listen to it as a podcast. So thank you for preserving this history.
Well, I'm glad to, and I'm glad to be a part of the Rutherford County Historical Society. We have a lot of individuals that are part of this society that are doing these things every day. We've got several that are very interested in our cemeteries around the county, preserving those. In fact, we are finding cemeteries each and every day as new development happens that we don't realize those cemeteries are there. And we're looking to preserve any of those that we can, to take care of those cemeteries and go from there to protect those individuals who have been a part of Rutherford County to save where they are located and where they're buried. In fact, today I've come here to talk about the courthouses of Rutherford County. And, the courthouse we currently have right here sitting in the square of Murfreesboro, that courthouse was built many years ago. We're not like some counties around here that have built new, modern courthouses. That one right there has been here a long time, and I'm going to tell a little bit about that.
Okay.
Before we get into that, we need to look at how it got here, where we've come from, and see exactly why we have what we have. A lot of times you can understand something if you know where you come from. None of us are promised tomorrow. And I think the storms that we went through this past weekend tells us that. We just don't know what tomorrow is, but we can look at yesterday. And by looking at yesterday, it helps us to prepare for tomorrow. But when Rutherford County first began here, all these many years ago, we had a group of people to settle, wanting to form Rutherford County, and the first courthouse was not here where we are now. We were in the town of Jefferson. And some people often say, where is Jefferson? Why in the world were we there? Why were we doing that? Well, it happened to deal with the fact of water travel. We didn't have highways. We didn't have the roads that we have today. But a lot of people use water to use it for commercial uses, to move lumber, to move anything else they had up to Nashville, to use the Cumberland River, to use the Tennessee River, to move our products back and forth and go that way. So Jefferson just happened to be sitting on the Stones River at that time to go that way where we could use it. And it was a good place to have water port to work from. So Jefferson was used as the county seat all the way back in the early 1800s, around 1804. Well, and Jefferson became the county seat. They built a courthouse there. It was a 2-story courthouse. It was something really. It was brick. It was brown and Spanish yellow. And you may ask, well, why in the world would they have such a colorful courthouse back at that time? Well, it seems like that was the color that was used for cities at that time. That told you, hey, that's a city. This is an important area. In fact, all the stores and things around Jefferson was pretty much the same color. I don't know if that just happened to be what Sherman-Williams had at that time, but that was the color that they used. It also had a jail. It had stocks for those that were not the nicest people in town. In other words, they took care of their criminals. And it stayed that way for a fairly good time. In fact, when we talk about that they had the stocks, they also had a whipping post. In fact, that was the general way that they handled crime back in that day up until about 1830. But at 1830s when they developed their first penitentiaries in the state of Tennessee, and that was discontinued around that time. The problem with Jefferson was its distance from the rest of the county. You had a lot of people that began to settle within Rutherford County, and they were looking for another way to get to their county seats. You got to understand, you got to have the county seat because that's where all your court cases are handled. That's where you would go to deal with. You might be wanting to sue somebody. That may be where you wanted to transfer a deed. That may be where you want to do anything that had to do of legal situations would have to go to the courthouse. So Jefferson was out of the way for a lot of people to travel to get to do these things. It was way up in the northern part of the county. It was up above, near Smyrna, up above that area up there. So people started complaining. They wanted something different to do. So they sent a decree to the state capitol. And no, the state capitol was not Nashville at that time. It was Knoxville, Tennessee.
Wow.
So they had to send that up. So they sent that all the way up there to the General Assembly in 1811, asking them to find a new place for the county seat of Rutherford County. So the General Assembly listened to them. They said, well, you can do that, but what we want you to do is find a central located area within the county, and we want that to be a 60-acre area that you can find to make that your county seat area. And said what you need to do is when you find these 60 acres near the center, you will take 2 acres for a courthouse area and locate it there. There's only one catch to it. You can't tax the people to pay for it. You'll have to come up with funding some way to pay for it. So they come back and they began a search and a location for the county seat at that time. They were told that they could have a courthouse, they could have a jail. Of course, you got to remember this is 1811. They still had the same law procedure. They had to put together an area for stocks and whatever they needed there to take care of the lawbreakers and do that. They sent out surveyors. They sent out someone to find an area and where they wanted to place this. Well, the area they wanted to place it is where we are today, Murfreesboro. So they went about looking in this area. They wanted to place it within this area, but they had to find 60 acres. Well, all of a sudden, it became a sort of a challenge to, okay, who wanted to provide the 60 acres, who wanted to sell it to the people, who wanted to provide all of this, and you had 3 individuals that had the property that wanted to do this. Well, I just got through talking to the mayor as he left the radio station here, and I was telling him about this history. And the thing is, you had the people, you had the Murphys, you had the Lytles, and you had the Reedys, who had property within this area that wanted to make that. Well, it became a situation of going back and forth trying to get these individuals to decide who was going to provide the acreage.
And I want to thank you for that. And this concludes our first segment. And my guest today has been Rutherford County Commissioner Pettis Reed. And he's talked about the storied history of Rutherford County. And when we come back, we'll continue our discussion.
This is Lisa Halliburton with Bell Jewelers. Well, it's awesome that we have our two wonderful jewelers, because if you need your engagement ring, your diamond set, we're able to do the work right away. We're very fortunate that we have two very talented and trustworthy jewelers. This is Lisa Halliburton inviting you to come join our family at Bell Jewelers, 821 Northwest Broad Street, across from Toots Restaurant.
Guys, there's a lot of people talking about testosterone, but do your homework and be sure to go to a provider you can trust. I recommend Low T Center. It's where I get my levels checked. Low T Center exclusively specializes in men's wellness. They check all your levels, not just your testosterone, and they determine the cause of any symptom you are having and whether you're a candidate for low T or something else like low thyroid or sleep apnea. Typically, their annual health assessment is completely covered by health insurance, and they check everything, including PSA, which is your prostate levels, and they check your thyroid, liver, and kidney function, cholesterol, glucose levels, and more. Low T Center has affordable and convenient options for treatment, including monitored self-inject treatment that ships directly to you each month, so no need to come to the center each week. Make your health a priority this new year and schedule your annual health assessment at Low T Center today. Covered by most health insurance or less than $100 cash pay. Go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointment online. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare.
We're talking with Carol Johnston.
My son lives here, and when I'd come to visit, I'd drive down Memorial and see Adams Place, and I thought it was such a beautiful setting. I was just very impressed with the friendliness of the staff. They put the residents first here, and I like that very much.
I'm Terry Deal. Call me for more information about Adams Place, located at 1927 Memorial Boulevard, across from Walmart.
It's Good Neighbor Events, brought to you by Cardinal Realty Solutions, the law offices of John Day, and AmeriCare Pest Control. If you're not waking up to the wake-up crew, here's what you've been missing.
Simultaneous Scooby.
It's in stereo. Don't miss the wake-up crew with John, Brian, and Dalton. Weekday mornings from 6 until Swap and Shop.
Let the experts at Cardinal Realty Solutions help you with your Middle Tennessee real estate needs.
Cardinal went over the process, so we knew what to expect.
Find a realtor you can trust.
They made it less stressful
at cardinalrealtysolutions.com.
WGNS encourages you to shop local. Patronize our local family businesses. The Doggone Adoption Event, Saturday, April 15th, from 10 until 3. At PAWS, the Pet Adoption Welfare Service. You need to be there. They're at 285 John R. Rice Boulevard, next to the Lane Agri Park. Well, you've heard us talking about the Lineball Library celebrating its 75th anniversary, and you need to be at Rutherford Reed's Saturday evening, April 15th, from 6 until 9 at Oakland's Mansion. It all benefits the Rutherford County Library System. For information, get with the library. Do you have your tickets yet for the 20th annual Mayor's Prayer Breakfast, hosted by Greenhouse Ministries? It's going to be Thursday morning, May the 4th, but those tickets are available only in advance, $25 per ticket. The Mayor's Prayer Breakfast will be at the Experience Community Church on the Old Salem Road, Thursday morning, May the 4th at 6:30. Get with Greenhouse Ministries for more information. And those are WGNS Good Neighbor events.
Good neighbor weather.
We'll see a few scattered rain showers early this afternoon. Otherwise, cloudy skies, a high in the upper 60s. Then for tonight, mostly cloudy, low 58. I'm meteorologist Jennifer Vujicic, Scan News Radio, WGNS. Currently, it's 57.
WGNS is powered by Middle Tennessee Electric. MTE's Plugged In podcast focuses on the world of electric vehicles. Stay up to date on the EV world, hear interviews with experts, and more. Listen on your favorite podcast platform or visit mte.com/pluggedin.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, and worldwide at WGNSradio.com.
We welcome back to the WGNS Roundtable my very special guest, Pettis Reed. Pettis, I'm turning it back to you.
All right, so I think we got to the point where they was trying to find the 60 acres. We had the three families that were offering, and what it come down to is that the Lytle family had 60 acres that they would provide. They would had it already broken down into lots that they would make available. And basically what the Lytle family, Captain William Lytle, land was chosen is that they would be allowed to keep some of the lots themselves to sell, and it would be made available to Rutherford County to build the county seat. They had to come up with a name, and they determined that at that time they thought Cannonsburg would be a good name for it. However, in 1811, it was suggested that a individual's name, so they chose Colonel Hardy Murphy's name, so it became Murfreesboro. And that's why we have the name today, named after that Revolutionary War hero from North Carolina. So they have found the place. They've got the 60 acres. They've got to do something with it. They have an ultimatum that you can build a courthouse, but you got to pay for it. They have no ability to go out here and tax the people to pay for it, so they got to do it. So they sold the lots. It belongs to the 60 acres. They got to keep 2 acres in the center to build the courthouse on, and that's what they did. They went around selling all the different lots. But something you got to remember, what about Jefferson up there that had been the county seat? What do you do about the people that was originally the county seat? Well, a lot of the businesses moved down here. They come from Jefferson to Murfreesboro, and believe it or not, they painted their buildings exactly like they did in Jefferson. They were brown and that mustard yellow, just like they had up there. So they started building the businesses and things right here in Murfreesboro. They sold all the lots, and they come up with enough money to build a new courthouse. They built a new courthouse. It was 50 feet square, 2 stories. It was 12 and 14 feet high. It was all brick. It had a pointed roof, and on the very top of it, it had an eagle with his wings and wings spread. So it was adequate. It was exactly what they needed. It's what they wanted there. So in 1819, they were able to begin with the courthouse. They had everything they needed right there, and they began. Also about this time, they were in the process within the state of Tennessee of moving the Tennessee General Assembly. Knoxville was too far away. They wanted something more centralized within the state of Tennessee. So it was a discussion where to move the state General Assembly. Well, everybody seemed to think, well, it's going to go to Nashville. They wanted a centralized location. Where is the center of Tennessee? It's in Murfreesboro. So 1819, they convened the 13th session of the Tennessee General Assembly in Murfreesboro in this new courthouse. Everything was there for them. They had the tables and everything for them. 2 floors, so they had the upper chamber and lower chamber right here. They didn't have the offices for the clerks and things there because they wasn't built for that, so they used other places in the area. The only thing is when the Tennessee General Assembly gets here, everything else followed it too. Everything around the square suddenly became hotels for people to stay. As well as what come along with this was a whole lot of taverns come into Murfreesboro. They followed it too. So there's the General Assembly is located here. But Nashville for some reason, didn't want to give up the fact that, hey, we want the General Assembly. We still would love to have it here. For some strange reason, one evening in 1822, there was a gentleman by the name of Harris seemed to show up in Murfreesboro. Nobody knew him. Nobody had any of his whereabouts and whatever, and he seemed to talk this sort of thing. That night, the courthouse burnt all the way to the ground.
Oh, my.
They lost the place for the General Assembly to meet in Murfreesboro, and everybody knew it's doomed, and Mr. Harris disappeared. So that's the story that's told. And if you had to try it, you would have no witnesses. You had no Mr. Harris. Nobody knew him. Nobody found him. So the courthouse is burnt. What do you do? How do you handle the General Assembly of the state of Tennessee? Well, you got to remember you're in Rutherford County, and you're dealing with Rutherford County people. I've already told you about how they are and what they do.
Strong people.
At the same time the courthouse was being built, the new Presbyterian church was being built not too far from the square, just off the square. In fact, if you know where City Cemetery is located today, a brand new Presbyterian church was built also. It was built with 2 galleries on the second floor area. What they did, they went over there to the Presbyterian church. They put flooring from one gallery to the other gallery and made an upper chamber. They took that church building and turned it in to the state capitol.
Wow.
They made it available for all the General Assembly and continue having the Tennessee General Assembly here in Murfreesboro.
What a community.
And you started having some interesting people that would show up for that General Assembly. We had individuals by the name of David Crockett. He was serving at that time here in Murfreesboro. You had a clerk serving in the Senate at that time by the name of James K. Polk, who happened to attend school at Bradley Academy. So these were names that was made history in later days, but yet they were here in Murfreesboro serving in the Tennessee General Assembly. And there was often a visit by an individual to town that a lot of people will recognize the name. His name was Andrew Jackson.
Absolutely.
And Andrew Jackson, the story is told about how he came in on a great white horse one day, circled the city square, and went over to the state capitol and announced that he was running for the Senate of the United States. He often visited here. He was given a set of swords for his honors in the War of 1812. He was recognized by the city of Murfreesboro and by the citizens of this area. He was often seen many times during campaigns within the city of Murfreesboro. So Murfreesboro's had a lot of interesting visitors during that time and became a part of it. The legislature stayed here until 1826 when Nashville finally got their wish and it was moved from the city of Murfreesboro. Now, the story is told, the reason it moved. Now, I want you to understand something. I serve on the county commission now, and we're oftentimes, people will fuss, you're not conservative enough, you're not saving our money and whatever. At that time, there was a choice whether Murfreesboro kept the state capitol or not. The choice was that if you wanted to keep the records or not, you would have to come up with $100 to transfer all records here. We didn't want to come up with $100. We thought it was a waste of money. So the records were, Davidson County or Nashville said, we'll put up the $100. They went to Nashville. So it was transferred in 1826. The General Assembly went to Nashville.
For $100.
For $100. Well, you got to remember, $100 back in that day was quite a bit of money. So, you got to think that we lost this being the state capital state of Tennessee by $100. But I personally have to think I'm sort of glad from what we have today and what we've got. But
God has blessed us.
So we have that. What I understand here, there was another courthouse built similar to what was already there. We kept that, but yet there was a determination later by what the commissioners had determined that they needed something different here due to the fact the county was growing. And I think you've got to understand that, that sounds familiar. We see that today. But for Rutherford County, from the time of 1826 to 1859, since the capital had left, there wasn't that much activity happening right here. But it did start to begin to become a little bit better. We had more commerce. We had more farming happening within the county. The rural areas were showing a lot of prosperous cotton growing and things of this type, as well as livestock. So it was seen that around the 1850s, it was determined that Rutherford County needed a new courthouse. They wanted something to rival anything Nashville could see. They wanted something to be something that would stand out, that would anywhere within this country. We wanted a courthouse that would be something that would be remembered if anybody come this area. So they determined that they wanted a courthouse that would be built in 1859 to follow these types of procedures. So they did. They went about building what you see here today. The courthouse that you are seeing here on our square today began in 1859. In fact, they had determined that it would be completed at that time. They started the courthouse with a rock foundation, and something you need to remember that many of the early houses that were built on rock foundations around this area up here. Some were not. Mm-hmm. Some had some brick foundations that we've had problems with that we have to go back in and replace at times. So this courthouse had a steady, solid foundation, and it's one reason it remains today. They determined they wanted an ornamental structure, so they did a lot of hand construction upon this courthouse. You can still see it today. They put a cornerstone that shows the date. If you'll go to the north side of the courthouse that we have, you'll look and you'll see that cornerstone that was set there. Within that cornerstone, they had a lot of memorabilia that was placed in there. So they were very excited about what would be done. They were hoping that it would be finished at a record pace. However, it did not get finished at exactly at the time they wanted it to be finished, but it was only short by just a matter of days that would be finished. It has 8 columns. Those columns were very large. They're made out of steel or iron. They're iron columns, and they cost $4,000 a piece at that time to build. Mm-hmm. And this was something to set it apart from the type of structure that it was built to build those. All the stonework was done by individuals. It had a tin roof that was put on there by John Frost. The painting was done by John Rather. Stonework and the porticos were all done by Mr. M. Baker. And the iron columns was done by Thomas Brenton of Nashville. Each one of them is 40 feet in length. Now, the top of the building, which you see the cupola. It's 16 feet at the base, running up, presenting 4 sides on which is painted clock dials corresponding. On the inside, there is an elegant 8-day clock and large bell used for striking time and ringing for courts and general meetings. Now, you can still hear that striking today. The clock you hear striking today is not the one that was there at that time. However, if you'll come inside the courthouse now for the new museum, you can hear that clock and see that clock strike. It's in fact, I catch myself many times before meetings, and that clock strikes down there in the lobby. It's watching that work. It's a masterpiece of how it does work and how it works that way. The whole size of this building, from the ground to the tip of the cupola, is 110 feet in height. So it's quite a large, striking building. Now, the original building had 2 courtrooms, 8 rooms for offices, clerks, and jurors, 3 fireproof vaults for safekeeping of books and county papers. And it had everything any well-furnished courthouse would have. Today, those vaults are still in there. We still see some of those vaults. And some of them are still used. It's something that is quite impressive. Now, You remember I told you what the columns cost? The courthouse? The cost of that courthouse, $40,000.
What a bargain.
What a bargain today. Could we not build one? Wouldn't it be great? We had one for $40,000 today.
My guest in this segment has been Commissioner Pettis Reed. And when we return, we'll continue our discussion of the Rutherford County Courthouse.
Chip Walters here with Exit Realty Bob Lamb & Associates. I was named a top 10 agent in the #1 Exit Realty office in America in 2021. The top question I get around town, how's the market? Good question. And the answer's changed a few times this year alone. I'd like to know what you've heard and share some solid data we have. Give me a call and let's have a cup of coffee and take a look at what's happening in your neighborhood. All my contact info is right on my website, choosechip.net. I'm Chip Walters with Exit Realty Bob Lamb & Associates.
This is Dr. David Morris with Magnolia Medical Center. Do you suffer from peripheral neuropathy in your hands or feet, burning pain, balance problems, and decreased quality of life? Magnolia Medical Center can help.
Magnolia Medical Center in Murfreesboro. Online at magnoliamedicalcenters.com.
WGNS is powered by Middle Tennessee Electric. Seriously looking at solar power generation? MTE offers a free consultation with an energy expert and has an entire library of educational resources. To learn more, visit mte.com/prosolar.
You don't have hot dogs or apple pie or no Chevrolet to drive, but we have some hickory smoked wings you're just dying to try. You'll try them, you'll like them, you'll give some to a friend. So on a dare, just stop on by and bring in a friend. Slick Pig Barbecue, 1920 East Main.
Premier 6 Theater on Broad in Jackson Heights.
Let's all go to the movies.
Check out what's showing at murfreesboromovies.com. Popcorn popped fresh daily.
Movies like the good old Premier 6.
Premier 6 on Broad in Jackson Heights.
Here at Bud's Tire, we make buying Michelin tires simpler. I'm Allison Mitchell with Bud's Tire Pros. We offer a straightforward approach to service, including nationwide warranties with every purchase. Stop in today to see our full lineup of Michelin and BF Goodrich tires. For whatever you drive, Michelin and BF Goodrich have a tire to fit any need. Bud's Tire Pros, hassle-free, guaranteed. We're located on East Main Street, exactly 3 miles from the town square, 1 mile past Rutherford Boulevard. Visit us online at budstirepros.tn.com.
Del Walmsley and the Wealth Cycle. This is the Wealth Cycle that I've taught for 30 years. Buy one house, 10 houses, an apartment, 2 apartments, 8, 20, 500 units, 1,000 units, 2,000, 5,000 units. And as you keep putting the money and the profits back in, you become one of those rich people. And much quicker than you'd even believe.
Learn Del's Wealth Cycle at GiveMeTotalFreedom.com. Use promo code 2023. Save 60%. Code 2023. GiveMeTotalFreedom.com. GiveMeTotalFreedom.com.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, and worldwide at WGNSradio.com.
This is J. Paul Newman, and you are listening to the Roundtable. And my special guest today is Commissioner Pettis Reed. And Pettis, tell us more about our historic Rutherford County Courthouse.
Well, the courthouse also had a lot of different other things that was involved in it. You got to remember back in the 1850s, a lot of livestock actually was running free within this county. A lot of things had fences and things of that type. The courthouse square was also enclosed with an iron fence as well as stone that was set around there. Now, thing about the courthouse, you're talking about a brand new $40,000 courthouse with all of these beautiful carvings and everything you had on it. The inside was totally furnished. It was all set for business. It was doing everything in 1859. But you got to remember, in just 2 years, the war began. It went through the Civil War. It saw different hands holding control of the courthouse from the southern side to the northern side. It was a central point for headquarters for both armies. Both used the courthouse as their lookouts and areas of that things of that type. Inside the courthouse, it was basically stripped of everything that was in there. Soldiers stayed on top of the roof. The tin in places was totally removed and torn away. The majority of the roof, in fact, was lost during the war. Water came in. The plaster walls was heavily damaged. Soldiers who were from the other states and from the north, they wrote their names. They scratched their names in the boards and things. The stairways had iron railings that had come from different areas of the country when they were first put in, were literally torn out of the courthouse. Steps were taken away and within the courthouse. The courthouse was 75% damaged during the Civil War, not from cannon or anything of that type. It was just from the vandalism and use from the armies using it. During the Battle of Murfreesboro, it became a hospital. I've read many diaries where soldiers found their friends located within the courthouse. Where you go to pay your taxes now, that became a area for surgeries and things of that type during the Civil War. The Battle of Murfreesboro saw the entire courthouse yard covered with bodies and people waiting to get in to see doctors and things of that type. So I call her the old lady, saw a lot of tragedy during that particular time. In fact, she was set on fire twice. Once when the armies were swapping times of control of the city, when the Union Army pulled out to go fight up in the Kentucky areas, the upper clock area was set on fire. But due to the citizens of Murfreesboro, when they pulled out, they went upstairs and put the fire out, saving the building. When Nathan Bedford Forrest come to release some prisoners in July of 1862, a small fire was set in the stairwell to smoke out some that were Union Army that was up in the second floor. But that was handled and controlled and put out too. After the war, the courthouse was regained. It was reworked. It was put in new roof. It was put back, but at that time not totally in the grandeur that it was when it was brand new. But over the years, it saw reconditioning. It saw rework. It became the place to be. It became the place to go to. It also became the place to be on election night. I can remember as a young boy coming to the courthouse square on election night. It was the most festive area you've ever been in your life. The entire square was just covered with people, everybody sitting out to hear the results of who became your next county judge at that time, who was the new sheriff, who was whatever. Inside the courthouse was a huge chalkboard with the names of the candidates and a gentleman on a ladder and a big cloth. And he would climb the ladder, and when new results would come in, he'd write the numbers down and erase them with a cloth.
Fascinating.
And everybody would cheer whenever their candidate would get a new race. And that went on all night long until the race was over. Because you got to remember, there wasn't computers back in those days. They brought in the election boxes, which were counted by hand. But it was quite a scene to be a part of, the election days. I guess that sort of brought me into the feeling of how someday maybe I want to be involved in that. It seems like now it's not all that big a deal, but I still on election night come up here to the election office just to be a part of that sort of celebration. But the courthouse has seen so much. It's been a part of everything that's happened within this county right here. I can remember the days that whenever the parades that you would have. Central High School had a lot of parades. Their homecoming was there. MTSU always had their homecoming parade there. We saw General MacArthur when he come home with his, I have to call her his bride, who was from Murfreesboro. And the entire county turned out for that.
Wow.
So the courthouse at one time was called Big Red because she had been painted red. The brick had been painted red because for some reason everybody thought the courthouse should be red. It was even suggested at one time the courthouse should be painted white. but that fell through. That didn't happen. In 1960, the 2 wings, one on the south and one on the north, was added. That's the only additions that's been made to the courthouse, are those wings. At that time, also an elevator was placed in the courthouse other than the stairs. There used to be 3 floors that you would go to. There's still 3 floors, but there used to be a floor over where the courtroom is today. And there were offices up there on the 3rd floor all the way across that. There was the extension office, the soil conservation offices were located there. After they took those out and restored in the 1990s, they've restored the courthouse back to what it would look like in the 1800s, and that's what it looks like today, where we as County Commission meet now. Plus, we've also built a new judicial building. There are no court actions taken within the courthouse. Only the County Commission, the mayor's office, and the trustee and our financial departments are located there now. So the old girl has seen a lot. The old girl's been a part of this county, and I think it's important that we keep that going that way. There have been those, I know at one time, that discussed, well, maybe we need to tear this down and build something modern.
Oh.
There was a tremendous discussion within the County Commission, as well as you got to understand, there were a lot of ladies that said no. We want to keep our roots, we want to keep what we are, and we want to keep this courthouse. So that's what we see. Mayor Bill Ketron, in his term, he saw the importance of keeping the courthouse looking what it should be. We had a recondition to the outside. We had a recondition to the inside. We now have a new museum on the inside that I suggest people go by and see, that tells the history of Rutherford County.
Tell us a little bit about what's inside that museum.
That museum, I've had people say, well, I guess that's a Civil War museum. It's not. In fact, it begins from the very beginning of Rutherford County. It talks about everything that was here and how we were. It talks about everybody that has made a part of what Rutherford County is today. It talks about the industries that have showed up here. It talks about the creation of our medical fields. It gives us one room in there you can actually go in, and on all the walls are large murals that makes you see the square as it was back in the 1920s or so.
Wow.
We have furniture in there was built by craftsmen here in Rutherford County. We have all types of things that we think you would get a good feeling of what Rutherford County started with and what we are today. And we invite people to come up at any time. It's open anytime the courthouse is open right now. It's free. And we invite you to come up there and be a part of it.
And in the remaining minute or so that we have left, can you tell me just a little bit about Cannonsburg?
Cannonsburg today is a representation of the very beginning of what Murfreesboro, what you would have seen here. It has also a lot of what the county is, the country stores that we have there, an old one-room school. In fact, that school building come off of my grandfather's farm and how it all began there. You've got museums out there also that shows the agricultural. That really is what made Rutherford County prosperous and began to give us what we have at the very beginning before industry decided to be a part of this county. Cannonsburg is, as I mentioned before, was the first name of Murfreesboro. It also shows a little bit of our culture and how we began this county.
And one of the things that we were discussing earlier is the tornado that came through this weekend. Do you want to make a few comments about that?
The tornado that come across, and we just were seeing some things and how it went across this county, beginning, if you look at this county, it began over at the very edge of Eagleville. It come through Rigsby Road, Bunker Hill, come down Mount Pleasant where I live. It lifted at Versailles Knob, then it come over towards Rucker, Christiana, and then ended up at Readable. Many homes were lost in this whole area, many families disrupted. The great thing was we didn't have anyone that was killed, very few injuries in what we've got here. So Rutherford County has gone through a lot of these, but we're very fortunate to have the first responders we have. I was out all night. well, started Friday night into Friday morning and all day Saturday being a part of that. I've seen a lot of these people working all day, all night long, and we should be appreciative of what they do.
And we want to thank God for taking care of all of us.
Very much. He had his hand out there.
My special guest today has been Commissioner Pettis Reed.
You have been listening to the Roundtable on your Good Neighbor station, WGNS. As we end our program today, we thank WGNS for providing the airtime. And we thank our producers, Scott Walker and Brian Barrett. We also thank our special guest, Rutherford County Commissioner and Historical Society official, Pettis Reed. Most of all, we thank you for listening. If you missed any part of this program, it will be available shortly as a podcast on the WGNS website. In my closing moments, I also want to invite you to tune in tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for the Tuesday edition of the Roundtable. The Tuesday Roundtable is hosted by Wayne Blair and Rick Hall, and they will be talking all things Smyrna. And please remember to tune in for my next appearance on the Roundtable. That will be next Monday morning at 9 a.m. And please do not touch the dial, because coming up after the break is one of WGNS's most popular hours. It's Rutherford Issues with Brian Barrett. We leave now by saying, stay safe, stay healthy, stay involved, and please stay informed. This is J. Paul Newman, wishing everyone a blessed day.
Portions of our programming have been pre-recorded. The Good Neighbor Network, WGNS, Murfreesboro, Smyrna, flagship station for MTSU Sports. Courthouse clock time, 10 o'clock.
Seniors Helping Seniors, in-home care services.
Seniors Helping Seniors helped me with grocery shopping.
This is Danielle Rutherford with Seniors Helping Seniors.
I'm so thankful.
Online at shsmiddletn.com.
Guys, if you've noticed a lack of energy, motivation, and drive, it could be low T. Schedule your complete health assessment at Low T Center. They now offer the convenience of monitored self-inject at-home testosterone treatments for only $155 a month cash pay, or covered by most health insurance. If you don't live near Low T Center, or you just need the convenience of at-home treatment, Low T Center makes it easy to get started on treatment. Only your first 2 visits are in person. Go to lowtcenter.com now to book your appointment online. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare.
Don't miss earning 50 times the national average savings rate on your money. Open a Brighter Day savings account at Redstone Federal Credit Union and earn 5.09 annual percentage yield on balances up to $2,500. Keep earning with 0.4 APY on balances over that. Don't wait. Open your Brighter Day savings account today at any Redstone branch or through online banking. Membership eligibility required. Visit redfcu.org/save for more information.
David Jacobs with the Happy Book Stack.
Our new hours are Tuesday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturday 9 to 5 p.m., and Sunday from 9 to 4 p.m.
Find the Happy Book Stack in Murfreesboro on social media like Facebook by typing